Master valve decoder. Now we move on to the master valve decoder. It's important for WeatherTrack users to understand that when dealing with a master valve, you have two different options on how you can connect that master valve to the controller. The first and preferred option is to direct wire the master valve to the controller, or connect that master valve using its own specific wire path, just as you would on a conventional wire system. The reason we prefer and recommend this method is because if your master valve is wired to the two-wire path and something happens to that two-wire path, the issue on the two-wire path can create enough interference that the controller won't be able to activate the master valve. So with WeatherTrack, we feel like the direct wire method is the safest way to ensure that your master valve works when you need it most. This picture shows the valve wire terminal block available on the H2O two-wire controller that gives you the ability to direct wire as many as 4 separate master valves and or 4 separate flow sensors directly to the controller. However, sometimes the direct wire method isn't convenient or even realistic on retrofit controllers. So the H2O does give you the option to put that master valve onto the two-wire path using a master valve decoder. It's also interesting to note that it doesn't have to be all one or the other, but it can be mixed and matched, some points of connection direct wired and some points of connection wired to the two-wire path. To be clear, the direct wire option does not require a decoder at all. Only when you are putting that master valve onto the two-wire path will you need a master valve decoder. Now let's look at that master valve decoder, or the MV decoder. Part number WT2W-H2O-MV. So again, on the back we have the installation instructions, how to do this in the field. Use proper care when installing the device onto the two-wire path and onto the valve. So you see the instructions and the wiring diagram and the warning about using the proper wire nuts. So use the information to properly install the device. And again, the device comes with all of the necessary wire connectors, so always use the DBRYs. And then you also have the device. You see with the master valve device, you've got the black and the red where you plug the device into the two-wire path. You've got the orange and the white for wiring the master valve in the field. You've got the LED diagnostics on the device. Now let's program the master valve decoder. Again, you plug the black and red wires of the decoder into the terminal located on the mini chassis board, labeled station program and also labeled black and red. Once the decoder is plugged in properly, we hit the setup menu and then the forward arrow until we get to a screen that says configure H2O2 wire on setup 15. From here, you'll use the plus and minus buttons until the screen display reads program decoders. Then you'll hit select and press the star button to begin the programming process. And you'll notice when it reads this decoder, master valve automatically pops up. If this is the decoder for the second master valve on the system, or POC2, using the plus or minus buttons, we'll have to assign this to master valve 2. Once I have the proper device address displayed, I'll hit the star button again. This will allow me to select the power level for the decoder, and I usually leave it in the default, which is low. And then I hit the star button again, and you'll see the message programming successful. And there's a reminder on the screen of the hot wire for your device in the field. So remember to label your decoder, then unplug it from the station program terminal. Just as a reminder, remember that there is specific programming for the second, third, and or fourth master valve that you put on a system. So if you're programming the decoder for your second master valve, make sure to program it as MV2. It's also important to note that the WeatherTrack H2O will assume that the master valves are directly wired to the controller, and you have to program the controller specifically to look for the master valve decoder on the two-wire path. To get that done, again, we go to our setup menu, and we hit that forward arrow until we get all the way to setup 15, where it says configure H2O2 wire. And we will use the up and down arrows until you get to a screen called Configure Direct Connect. When you get there, we'll push Select, find the ability to assign all 4 master valves either to DI or direct installation, or if I hit plus or minus, I can change that to 2W, which tells the controller to look for that master valve decoder on the two-wire path. And if we wanted to demonstrate the mix and match scenario, where our first master valve is directly wired to the controller, but then master valves 2, 3, and 4 all live on the 2-wire path, for master valve 1 we would leave it as DI, but then we would use the forward arrow button to advance to the second master valve, and push plus to change that to 2W, and then forward and plus to change master valve 3 to 2W, and then forward again and plus to change master valve 4 to 2W. That way the controller knows that master valve 1 is a direct installation, but 2, 3, and 4 all exist on the 2-wire path.